Welcome to episode number 6 of the Better with Brock podcast. I have Katie. Is it still Katie Gilchrist?
Yeah, Katie Gilchrist.
I have Katie Gilchrist here with me. We actually worked together first in Sydney at Fitness First when I was a personal trainer. Now she's relocated to the UK, and we are going to talk about her transformation initially and then kind of dive into a bit of her story, which is very inspiring. I was a part of it early on and it's progressed from there. And I guess, it'll be a very insightful conversation. Even, as I said, I find it very inspiring, but we'll dive into that later on. But first of all, Katie, thanks for staying up tonight. It's 8:20 over there.
Yeah, 8:30, which probably doesn't sound very late to your listeners. They're probably like, what are you talking about?
That's late for me even. Sometimes Kiki and I have dinner at about 5 p.m. and we're like, yeah, let's just have dinner and just call it a night early. Gets late.
But it is late for me. I struggle to stay awake past 8:30, 9 o'clock at a push now.
All right, we got 7 minutes. Let's make this one good. So I wanted to chat first about your transformation. So we ended up working together when I was a face-to-face personal trainer. So I was relatively new to the game, I guess, in personal training because, well, I'd done it in New Zealand. I had done it in the Gold Coast. But when I was in Sydney, I met you relatively early on in my time at Fitness First. But we managed to lose 7.7 kg. I dug up the statistics and we lost 14 centimeters on your waist, which was awesome. And the thing I loved about you when we were working together is you were just like really fixated on being strong.
Yeah. And the 7.7 kg was fat.
Yeah.
Because I had the 2 DEXA scans. Do you remember there was no loss of muscle?
I do remember that conversation now. Sorry, that really slipped my mind. All right. Let me say that again. 7.7 kg fat loss, not weight loss, because there's a difference.
Yeah.
There is a difference. So yeah, as I was saying, you were really fixated on being strong, which I really love because is especially as a female, just because there was, there's so much, women only do cardio because that's, how you lose weight, or that was like, men do the weights and the girls don't. And I was always trying to get my female clients on the side of lifting weights. It doesn't make you bulky and all this kind of stuff. So why were you so fixated on that? And like, how did you not think, oh, I need to do cardio to lose fat? Like, what was your mindset around that?
Well, actually, years ago, that is what I thought, because I didn't know any different. So before I moved to Australia, I did go to a gym and I did treadmill and I did a few 10Ks, I did a half marathon, and I hated it. But I didn't know what other exercise women did. And then I moved to Australia. I decided to join a gym and I thought I'll go along to a few cardio classes, And this is before Yeah. And I actually really hurt my back in that body pump class, actually, because I had no training and they were just like, here, lift all these weights really quickly.
Exactly.
Anyway.
Yeah. I posted about that actually yesterday on my stories about group classes, because someone was like, should I do group classes? And I was like, the times that I've done them, I was forced to do them by my personal training manager. So I get a feel for it. And I hated it. But when I was a PT and I kind of peeked through the door, I was like, that is a room full of potential injuries just waiting to happen. Like, you're squatting straight away, you're deadlifting straight away, you're doing complex exercises when there's about 50 people in the class. They can't really watch you. And it's about sticking to the tempo. So you got to go as fast as possible, like mix really fast and relatively heavy with bad form week in, week out. It's not good.
Yeah, no. So I did actually really hurt my back doing that. But with the Fitness First membership, I got some free PT sessions. So I went along to those with no intention of continuing. And I met my trainer called Steve, and he introduced lifting to me. And then I kind of carried on the PT with him. And I think if it wasn't for him introducing deadlifts and squats and things to me, I wouldn't have I wouldn't have known about them or carried on. I'd never would have thought myself, let's go and try and learn what all those dudes are doing over there. That looks fun.
Yeah.
And it took a long time for me to get comfortable in gym. And I remember going up one day, looking through the window, and it's really, really full. And I was just like, nah, turned around and left. I texted Steve and I said, this isn't for me. I can't do it. I had a complete meltdown, complete panic attack. And he spent an hour texting me and trying to get to the bottom of what was wrong. And I just said, well, I'm worried that I won't know how to use the equipment. So he just went over and over the equipment with me. And then after our session one day, he just went, right, do all that again by yourself. See you next week. Bye. Walked off and just left me.
Yeah. All right, you remember that?
I remember, but it worked. And I really, I was really frightened, but I went round and did all the same things that we'd just done again. And that kind of set me off on my way. And then I moved into CrossFit for about 6 months. And I really enjoyed it, but I hated the cardio. And then I started to miss lifting in a controlled manner. I was like, this is silly. We're sorry, anyone who loves CrossFit. But, we have to do really heavy lifting, but really fast. And I think basically I tried it, I loved it, and then I started to not love it. And that's when I was like, well, I want to go back to the gym. So I came back to Fitness First, and then somebody had been talking about you at work. And so I got in touch with you. So I kind of came to you a little bit prepped to do lifting. And I remember coming to you and I'm like, want to do deadlifts, don't want to do cardio. You were like, great.
This sounds great. Yeah. Well, as I said, I was always trying to convince people that they don't need to do that, because even though today it's a bit of a dated thing to think that you have to do cardio to lose weight. Like, I think the calorie deficit chat is getting very popular. People are kind of aware that you need to create that. It's not just about going for a run and trying to lose fat that way. But then I still talk to people that are like, yeah, I'm running, I'm trying to lose weight, and I'm just, like, it's still out there. So it's always a kind of challenge for me to try and beat that out of people and say, like, you don't have to do that. Like, and now, especially after us working together, I could say to ladies, look at Katie, she lost, almost 8 kg, and we didn't do 1 minute of cardio, which is,
I don't
not
think
that
I ever ran for a bus, to be honest.
you're like, it's not worth it. I'm going to lose muscle if I do that.
I'll get the next one, don't worry.
Yeah, but like, we didn't really focus on it, and we just focused on getting strong, and we just focused on calories, which was a big one for you, like tracking calories and being aware of how much you were eating and kind of monitoring.
Like portion sizes. I mean, it wasn't about eating salad, which was really good. It was about just reducing the portion size a bit, being mindful of how many calories are in that full fat milk latte you're having, all those kind of hidden calories. And yeah, I was hungry for a bit, but that's okay. It's okay if you're a bit hungry.
Yeah, I think that's one thing that you have to understand when you're dieting as well. Like, a lot of people will start dieting, get hungry, and go, oh, this is, it's not meant to be like this. I need to eat more because I'm starving. And it's like, well, you kind of have to get used to that feeling in your stomach that's like, okay, I'm a bit hungry, but it's like, that's how you drop body fat. You can feel full and drop body fat, but there's always this element of hunger that you kind of have to put up with.
Yeah, and I trusted you. You worked out my calories and you knew how much I was training. So that really worked. I think if you're doing it by yourself and you've got no help, it must be really hard, because you'll sit there to your plate of salad, eat it and be really unsatisfied, and then go and eat loads of cakes or something. I don't know.
Yeah, but I think that's why it's super important to track. And a lot of people will say it's obsessive or it's bad for your mindset or eating disorders. And I do think that there is a group of people that probably shouldn't track at certain times in their life. But I do think that it creates an awareness that you never really forget. Like, you just really need to track, like, even tracking for a month will help, but I'm a big believer in at least kind of 6 months somewhere in your life. So you have this idea where you're like, okay, I know what a banana is. I know that, the full fat milk latte in the mornings, probably a 400 calorie bomb that I don't really need to have in the morning. and it just gives you this awareness. Like I will never forget, just because I was so OCD about it when I was younger, like how many calories is in an almond. Like I used to count. I've shared this before, but I used to count my almonds, and I was like, okay, there's
Yeah,
seven.
I remember you saying that. I have no
Yes,
clue.
yeah, 7 calories per almond, and I used to have 20 because I knew there was 140 calories, and I know that. So that probably is obsessive. I probably shouldn't have tracked at that time, but I have this awareness of, at least I know when things are high in fat, high in protein, high in carb. You know, do I have many calories left? Because that's high in calories, and I think, you know, like you're a very great example of how it benefited you. So you didn't have to eat salads or things that maybe didn't interest you, and you were still eating
Mm.
food that you liked as well.
Yeah, yeah. I don't think like the types of food I ate didn't really change. I just knew that if I ate a cake, you know, I maybe wouldn't have as much dinner or something.
Yeah. So you're having cake first, cake before dinner.
Yeah, cake for breakfast.
Yeah, I like it. So you also managed to kick alcohol to the curb as well.
Yeah.
And I have never really drunk. I tried it when I was younger, but didn't really kind of catch on to it. Didn't really get it. I think beer tastes gross. I think wine tastes gross. Um, and if I ever did, I liked Bailey's, which I get a lot of crap for.
Well, that's a
But
bit weird that you don't like basic like beer, but you don't drink. You didn't drink, but you drink Baileys.
well, because I used to sip it when my mum would have it.
Oh,
Um,
okay.
yeah, and then dad would have beer, and it would just like, if you have the option of beer and Bailey's, I don't know, I just got into Bailey's. But anyway, that's kind of irrelevant. What, like, because you just kind of stopped it. Like you just went like, okay, I'm just not doing it anymore. What made you want to do that?
Well, I've always been one to get really bad hangovers when I go social drinking, and
Mm,
I think how old was I when I met you? Maybe like 36, 37 years old. And I think my body just started to get worse when I was drinking, the older I got. And then it got to the point where I was getting really, really sick, even after 2 or 3 bottles of beer. So
mm.
I reduced down to, you know, like low alcohol beers. And then I just thought, what's the point? There's no point. So I think I'd had a really bad time one night with some alcohol. I'd got a really bad hangover, and I was just like, no. And that's it. I have not touched a drop of alcohol since. That was like 3 or 4 years ago.
Yeah, that was a long time ago.
Yeah. And
So
it's
what's,
weird because, sorry, go on.
no, you go, you go.
It's weird because at first you feel really self-conscious about being out with drunk people,
Mm.
but then over time, that's your norm. That's your normal. So you don't think anything of it. And actually, it's the drunk people that find it. They're the ones that are uncomfortable with it because they're like, how can she be like this?
Yeah, exactly. And I think some people feel insecure about their drinking that they do. So I've experienced that a lot because I haven't drunk for pretty much most of my life. Um, People are like, oh, why don't you drink? Or you should have a drink, just because they feel guilty for drinking. And we're not
Yeah,
out there saying like, oh, why are you drinking? You're a bad person, or drinking's bad for you. But just the decision of you not drinking, some people, it kind of rubs them up the wrong way because they want to be doing that, but they're drinking because, I don't know, maybe they're giving into peer pressure, or maybe they just enjoy it, which is cool. But those usually aren't the people that kind of are a bit weird about it. They're like, oh, just have a drink, man. Come on, just relax, let your hair out, you know, this type of thing.
yeah.
Um,
They
but I,
don't get that you already are relaxed. And I remember one of our friends, I think it was about 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning, and everybody was really, really drunk. We had a house party in Sydney, and our friend just said to me, he was like, how do you put up with us? Because we used to go most weeks. He's like, how do you put up with us when we're like this? And I said, you're kidding. This is the best bit. It's hilarious. And I was like, none of you are going to remember this, but I will.
yeah. And I actually like that part of almost kind of looking after people, making sure they're okay. Because you're able to drop them home, or you're
Yeah,
able to be like, look, man, I think you should like not make that decision that you're trying to make. And you have this clear perspective. And yeah, I think people think that you're not having a good time when you're not drinking, but it's Well, I'm the opposite. Like, I think I'm having a great time when I'm out there. And I think if I was also drinking, I would be a bit crazy because I already get, high energy. Um, but what helped you, what helped you stick to it? Because a lot of people would have tried that, just gone cold turkey. I'm not drinking anymore, and then Friday comes along, Saturday comes along, Sunday comes along, and then they're hungover on the couch and they're like, okay, I'm going to do it again. Fresh start on Monday. But you've actually stuck to it for years. Like, what has
Yeah.
been the secret for you?
Do you know what? I think part of it's personality. I'm stubborn, and when I put my mind to something, that's it. I'm doing it. And part of it was the fear of feeling that hangover again, and also thinking how disappointed I'd be with myself.
Mm.
I mean, there's been times, on a sunny day when I've been like, oh, a nice fresh beer would be really nice. But then I'd think, well, no, because I'll really regret that because, just to have one beer after 2 years or whatever. And my husband often says, you know, you'd regret it. So I think it's a combination of stubbornness, personality, setting my mind on something, not wanting that hangover again, knowing how disappointed I'd be with myself. So I guess looking at what the consequences would be before I take the action.
Yeah, and I think you actually were feeling a lot better. I remember in the personal training sessions you were talking about how great you were feeling on the back of it, like when you were training and when you're waking up the next day, especially a Monday as well, coming into you have to go to work, you have to you were training with me. I'm pretty sure we were training early on in the week, but you were feeling heaps better, so that's obviously going to help
Yeah.
as well.
Yeah, and I just think you just feel better in general. It's one of those things that you kind of probably don't notice straight away, but over time you start to think, well, yeah, now I actually feel normal, like compared to always been hungover each week.
Yeah. Yeah, but your training was like going really well, and I remember we were getting like one of our things, and I'd love to talk about this just for a little bit, was like hitting heavy PB deadlifts. Like that was our thing.
Yeah.
We're like, all right, we're going for it. We're going for 80. We're going for this. We're going for that. And I think yeah, actually, before we go on to it, what was your heaviest PB? I can't remember it off the top of my head now. I could probably pull your
Yeah,
program up, but
I think it was 97.25.
97.25,
Is 25 a weight?
maybe.
It wasn't quite 98. Or was it 98? It wasn't quite 100.
Hmm. Almost made it. But that's strong. I'm like,
Mm.
not many people
We were
can say that they
aiming,
can lift almost 100 kg.
no, and I was 50 kgs myself at the time.
Yeah, double body weight. That's very impressive. That's very impressive.
Yeah, I remember we were going for 100, but we didn't quite make it before
Mm,
my operation.
yeah,
But we did make the pull-ups though, and we
we,
did the Spartan.
yeah, that was massive. I remember that. Well, that's cardio. Here's us saying that we're team non-cardio, and then we did the
Yeah, but
Spartan race.
that's why I was at the back of the group, and you were like stuck at the back with me.
I was like, let's do this. That was such a good day, though.
Yeah, it was really good. Yeah, I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed all the like the rope climbs and everything, and getting over that really big A-frame thing that I was terrified of heights. And I remember just like really tentatively climbing over the top. I was absolutely terrified, and you were at the bottom at one side, and my friends were at the bottom the other. All kind of patiently cheering me on.
Let's go. But it's so good that we were focusing on, as you can tell by like the Spartan, by hitting PBs and training regularly, that we were focusing on getting stronger, and we were focusing on performance based goals, right, which I'm very
Mm,
big on, as opposed to just aesthetic based goals. So focusing on what our body can do as opposed to just what our body looks like. And I think that's what led to your success. Like we were just, yes, we were tracking calories, and sure, we were aware of what your body was looking like, what your physique was like, what sort of progress we were making, because we were taking photos, we were measuring your weight, we were taking your measurements. But I think if you just focus on aesthetics, the kind of performance-based stuff doesn't really come, because you're not worried about how strong you are or what sort of weight you're lifting. And then you just kind of focus on, and I think a lot of people get stuck in this kind of just what you look like. And then if you look bad one day or you gain weight randomly, you kind of feel down and you feel like you're not making progress. And it's quite hard to measure sometimes by photos and weight and measurements, because they can do funky things. You know,
Mm,
especially if you're a female and you have your menstrual cycle, you can gain a couple kilos and then you're like, oh, well, I'm not making any progress. But if you're
mm,
focusing on what your body can do, performance-based goals, you can accurately measure if you're getting stronger and if you're progressing. Like for you, hitting chin-ups, hitting PB deadlifts. I think that's just so important. And I think you can get the aesthetic or the look that you're going for if you focus predominantly on the performance as opposed to just focusing on what you look like in the mirror, because that doesn't really translate to anything but kind of trying to help you get more confident, which is a great goal. But I think that confidence can also come if you're getting stronger and focusing on your performance, which is what you were doing.
yeah. It's weird because I hadn't really reflected on that until you just said it, but yeah, everything we did was about the performance, wasn't it? I mean,
Mm,
obviously I liked how it was changing my body, but it wasn't really my primary focus.
yeah. But I
I
think
don't
that,
think I ever came to you and said, oh, I've got a little bit of fat here, can we get rid of it?
yeah, it just kind of happened,
Yeah.
which is great. And I think a lot of people can benefit from that approach. Not saying that that we don't want positive changes in our body. Yes, we do. But the fact of getting stronger over time is going to help us build muscle anyway. And then you're probably
Mm.
going to burn fat, obviously, depending on what you're doing with your diet. But it was just, it was so refreshing, as I was saying, to see you just kind of come in and train hard. And you were like, I want big traps. And I remember sending you photos. I took some photos while you were training
Can you
of your
see it up
traps.
there on the kitchen cabinet?
Is it there? Go. Can you
Can
bring
you
it?
see it?
No. Oh, I can. Yeah, I can see a frame, but I can't see the photo.
That's that photo you took of me doing pull-up,
Wow.
chin-ups.
Actually, yes, I can see it now. I can see your blonde hair and your arms out the side, and you got your.
Yeah,
I think it was your Lululemon singlet that you had. Yeah.
Lululemon. Yeah, so I didn't do that photo. What happened was I put it on Instagram, and secretly my mum printed it off and wrapped it up for present for me for Christmas a couple of years ago in a frame. And I was like, well, I can't really put it on my windowsill or something. That's a little bit, hey, look at me. So it went up on the kitchen unit, and then we moved house a year later, and now it's on the top of the kitchen unit here, because every time I look up there, I think, well, that's what I can do, even though now I'm pregnant and, like I said earlier, I feel like a walrus. I can just look up there and be like, it's okay, I can do that.
That's
Do that again.
awesome. That's awesome. Wow, that photo's really made it.
It has, yeah. And I didn't even know you'd taken it.
Yeah, that's awesome. So, how many chin ups did we get to?
5, which
Nice.
might sound really pathetic to some
No,
people.
that's no. There's a lot of people that can't even hit one. Not that that's that's a failure or anything, but 5 is a huge achievement. So we got 5
Yeah,
chin ups. We got trap. It was trap bar deadlift, wasn't it?
yeah. Trap that personal best, that PB was trap bar deadlift.
Yeah,
Um, but I did sumos and regular deadlifts as well in my program.
yeah.
But the PBs were on the trap bar,
Mm.
which I know some people look down on the trap bar, but I don't care.
I'm a huge fan of the trap bar. I think it's so great. And you find often people don't get that lower back pain when they deadlift for the trap bar. Because I remember when we would do deadlifts, even though your form was great and it looked fine, when you'd finish, your back would be just feel a bit off sometimes, like, oh, it's not really working. And as soon as you
I
put the trap bar, it worked.
Yeah, I've got a funny back because when I was born, I had a really curved arch, and I had it kind of corrected as I was a child. And then I remember when I started deadlifting with Steve, I kind of got stuck at maybe 50 kilos for weeks and weeks and weeks. And it took a long time. And I think my back, is it my back that's really dominant over my abs? So I just, anything that's like kind of horizontal, so like planks, it really, really hurts.
Mm.
Yeah, I did have issues with my back, so I had to work through that. And then once I'd got past that kind of 50, 60 kilos, it did start to get a bit better. And I started to learn when it was when something was off, and then I would just stop. I wouldn't carry on and push. But the
Mm.
trap bar definitely, yeah, it did really help with that.
Yeah, and I think if you got a problem with the trap bar, that's just I think it's stupid, because it's about finding a solution that's right for you. You know, it's like what if you're holding a trap bar or holding a barbell? What's the difference?
Mm,
Like it's like it weighs the same, and you're actually allowed to train. And like the thing about the trap bar is the weight's all around you, as opposed to in
mm.
front of you, which so your erectors or your lower back, they just switch on for a lot of people. And then it's like, oh, how's that deadlift? Like, oh yeah, it was just all my back. It's like, well, it's actually a lower body exercise. Like your back should like, if you're doing it properly, yes, your lower back's engaged, but it shouldn't really be the main mover. Because if you're lifting with these small little erectors in your back, as opposed to using, your entire legs, that's not an efficient way to train. um
Yeah, and it's
yeah,
like with planks, you know, I can't do planks very well because it's just so much strain on my back. And I think, what, I don't need to do a plank. There's plenty of the things I can do to get, you know, a strong core. Like even the deadlifts give me a really strong core.
yeah,
You could punch me in the stomach and it'd be rock hard,
yeah.
but I couldn't plank for 15 seconds without being in pain.
Yeah, and I think that's the beauty of training. There's something for everyone. Like I remember we would do dead bugs, because we tried planks. Like we really tried them. We gave them a good go, but they just never really worked. So there's no point doing it just to kind of force it if it doesn't work for you.
Mm,
Mm. And so you touched on before, you said, before your operation, and I would like to dive into it, because that's why you said, we didn't have time to kind of reach the 100 kg trap bar deadlift. But take us through kind of what we kind of worked through, because I remember you telling me, that we had to, well, before we started training, like you prepped me, this is what I'm going through at the moment. And then you kind of, later on towards the journey, you told me, that there was a time frame where we had to kind of wrap up training, and for you to prepare for your operation.
mm.
um yeah, can you talk about that a bit? I'm not really sure how to kind of dive into it.
Yeah, so I think I'd been diagnosed when I met you, hadn't I?
Yeah, because you had
Told you about it.
the Instagram going too.
Yeah, so it was December 2017, when I was diagnosed with a brain tumor, and it was non-malignant, so not cancerous, but they're considered life-threatening because they grow towards your brain stem. But in reality, a surgeon's never going to let it grow that long once they know it's there. So I never actually feared for my life, but they
Mm,
are quite serious. They grow in your ear canal on the balance nerve, and they affect your hearing, your balance. They can affect your facial muscles. The tumor is called acoustic neuroma. So I got that diagnosis in December 2017, but actually I'd been investigating it for 2 or 3 years, I'd say. So I basically had like a soapy taste in my mouth for a long time, and
mm,
I had loads of investigations from the GP, procedures, B12 shots, endoscopy, colonoscopy, all these different things. And I eventually found a private ENT who said on his website that he looked into taste disorders. So I went to him, and I'd created my own scale of how bad the taste was in Excel, and tracked it and made it into a graph.
right.
Super nerdy.
That's
But
great.
anyway, I took this graph to him and I said, this is what my taste has been like for the last 6 months. And it was up and down, up and down, up and down, no pattern of anything. He looked at it and he said, well, you've got a sinus problem because it's all over the place on your graph.
Mm,
And as I was leaving, I said, oh, by the way, my husband said I'm going deaf. And he was like, okay. So he said, go here first off for a CT scan for your sinus, and then go here and get a hearing test done. So off I went. I thought, sinus problem, not a big deal. I didn't get around to having that CT scan. But I eventually went for the hearing test. And when the lady did the test, the results were that I'd lost hearing of certain pitches in my right ear. and she said it can indicate a tumor. So she said, you need an MRI. So I was like, okay. So a week later, she emailed me to check I'd booked it in, and I hadn't. And I was like, oh, okay, might be serious. So I booked in the MRI. And obviously, in the meantime, I'd gone to Dr. Google to find
Yeah.
out
As you do.
tumors, yeah, tumors that affect the hearing. And I'd actually only come across one, which was the acoustic neuroma. So I had the MRI, and I went back for the results. And he said, he put the scan up on the screen. He said, okay, so tell me, what do you see? And I said, well, like one side of my sinus was all black, so that's completely blocked. So that is what was causing the taste. And then I saw this little white, like kidney bean shape. I just pointed it and I said, a tumor. And he was like, yeah. He said, you've got an acoustic neuroma. So I was like, okay. And I already knew about it. I knew it wasn't cancerous. I was quite calm in the appointment. And he looked at me and was like, are you okay? I was like, yeah, I'm okay. And then I went outside and I phoned my husband. And then that's when I cried. And I was like telling him I've got a tumor. His boss drove him over to where I was. And we kind of went home, digested it. And my manager from work called. We had a chat and he said, are you as calm as you sound you are? As what you sound? And I said, well, yeah, I don't know. It just kind of, I mean, I was upset and it was scary, but I think I just kind of processed it quite logically and quickly.
Yeah, well, you were tracking, and I didn't even know about this, but you were tracking your taste and you were kind of researching. So I guess you were prepared for it. If it was, if it blindsided you, maybe that would have been a bit more of
Yeah.
a wake up call. But because you were so diligent, did your homework, maybe it didn't affect you as much.
Yeah, maybe. And I took a couple of days off work, me and George, and I did join a couple of Facebook groups, and it was good to ask questions and kind of find out technical stuff about it. But over time, I started to think how negative some of the groups were, and I really didn't find them helpful at all because I didn't have that outlook. So, and that's why I started my own Instagram page, to be honest, because it was really hard. I wanted to see pictures of people. It sounds a bit weird, but I was like, well, what does somebody look like after this surgery?
Yeah.
What does it do? What's the recovery look like in pictures? And you just couldn't really find it. So I started the Instagram page, which I've actually closed now, just because,
I saw that.
yeah, I got to a stage where my recovery had kind of plateaued, and I didn't want it to be one of those accounts where it's like, here's what I had for lunch today. And I wanted to do other things, I was doing
Just
my
eat it. No one
masters.
cares. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly that. So, and I thought, I did it for 3 years, it takes a lot out of you. You'll know this.
Yeah. Yes, I do know this. Yeah. Yeah. But it was such an inspiring journey to follow, and especially knowing you. And to kind of, I don't want to jump too far forward, we can kind of talk about that after, but how, so you've joined a couple of Facebook groups. You didn't really want to dwell on the negativity of it because like a lot of people would fall into that mindset of, being the victim, which is, I'm not trying to say that it's not a bad thing that's happening, and it's not something that you should worry about, but there's definitely that positive mindset that you carry that I think is super beneficial to focus on in hardship. Like I was, not to kind of put the story on me, but when I was dealing with my mum's loss, I read a book called The Power of Positive Thinking by Norman Vincent Peale, and that like saved me. Sometimes I'll say that book saved my life because it was like the power of positive thinking. It sounds so cheesy. And sometimes you read the book and you're like, oh man, yeah, whatever, just be positive when you're going through all this stuff. But it makes such a change. It makes such a big difference in your life when you're like actually staying positive in this time. So you started the Instagram account, you kind of started posting stuff. that wasn't negative, that was positive, and you were but you were also being honest as well. You were being real. Like, it wasn't like, oh, I'm feeling amazing and, this is going to be such a
Mm.
fun journey. Like, you were very honest as well. So where did that take you from there once you kind of started doing some research into it and started focusing on being positive?
Well, it it wasn't really a conscious decision to be positive. That's just the way I was, I think. And I think,
It's who you are.
yeah, and just to touch on what you said about being honest, it's not about ignoring how horrible it is. It's just
Mm.
kind of about, for me, it was about being practical and, thinking what can I do best for me. And it's also about framing, like how you frame your words. So, people might go on the Facebook groups and say, I've got this life-threatening condition. Well, yes, in theory, or it is life-threatening, or before MRIs, it was life-threatening, before the medical advances we have now. But in actual real life, if your tumor is found and it's small to medium, that they're never going to let you die from that.
Mm.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's kind of thinking about how you frame and what words you use to yourself.
Yeah. Language is huge. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think I just wanted to be, with my Instagram, I wanted just to post practical things that might help, without the doom and gloom, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah. So, so you went, so you went through with the operation. Do you want to talk a little bit about that, or not really?
Yeah. No, that's fine. So they monitored it for a year, and it
And
started to grow.
we were
Pardon?
training through this time.
Yeah. So that
Yeah.
year that I was training with you, they were monitoring it, but I always had in the back of my head that at some point I might need this operation, and I just wanted to get really as strong as I could and fit and healthy as I could.
Yeah.
So I guess
But
that was a big motivator.
yeah, but I think that's an awesome testament to your character as well, about that positive mindset and about being honest and all of that while we're talking about it. Like, you were still training. Like, you weren't going, oh, I have a brain tumor, I can't train, my life is over, or not my life is over, but my life is limited. So I
Hmm.
can't do this and that. Like, you were still pushing it. And I, like, I would push you hard, and I knew what you were dealing with.
Hmm.
But, you were really courageous and still training hard and still dieting and still checking in with me every week. Like, it was awesome to see. Like, not many people can do that, just being 100% healthy, without a brain tumor.
Well, the thing is, right, one, it's funny because some people, when they get diagnosed, you see in groups that they're saying, well, can I do this now? And I'm like, well, could you do that the day before you knew the tumor was there?
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
Because the only thing that's changed is now you know it's there.
Yeah, exactly.
So, so yeah, I guess, yeah. So it was being monitored and it started to grow, and it was um 13 mil when I first had the tumors. That's like just over a centimeter. And there's different approaches to the surgery that they can do. And one of the approaches could potentially preserve the hearing that I had. So I had lost 30% hearing already, and they might have been able to save the other 70% with this specific type of surgery. But if the tumor got bigger than 15 mil, they could no longer do that approach just because of the angle they're going.
Mm-hmm.
The downside of that approach was that there was more risk to the facial nerve because of the angle they go in.
Mm.
They kind of went in the top of the skull rather than through the back of the ear. So I had to make a decision. Did I want to risk my facial nerve and try and save the hearing? And if so, I had to do it quickly because it was fast approaching the
15
cut-off
mil mark.
point.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or I could have left it, let it continue to grow at whatever pace. They're usually slow growing, and they kind of spurts. Mine grew quite a bit in 6 months. And then maybe in 5 or 10 years, I could have had the operation, and that would have gone through the kind of the ear, back of the ear, and that would have 100% destroyed all the hearing in that ear. So those are my two options.
Mm.
Risk the facial nerve, maybe save the hearing, but have it done now. Or wait 5-10 years, definitely lose the hearing, but probably not lose the facial nerve.
Yeah.
So we decided to go with it's called middle fossa approach, when they go in through the top of your skull. Unfortunately, I lost all the hearing. It just switched off. And I got grade 6 facial paralysis, which is the most severe facial paralysis that you can get. So all the bad things that I was told may happen, all happened.
Mm.
And I think the thing I was most scared about, which is what most people with this tumor are scared about, is the facial paralysis. Aesthetically, it's really hard to adapt to, but also mechanically, it's really hard. So I had the surgery. I woke up. He said, "You've got facial paralysis." I don't really remember this. You know, I was in intensive care for 2 days. I was just completely out of it. I didn't really
Fair
care.
enough. Fair enough.
Yeah, yeah. I was just like, I don't care. But the other thing is, they have to cut your balance nerve when they do the operation.
Mm.
So you also have to learn to walk again.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. I
so you
remember
go through
you.
that rehab.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember you sending videos to me, walking around and, relearning how to walk. And even, just kind of, well, you also had scars as well. So you had to kind of, um, well, not deal with them, but you had that. And then you had to kind of reteach your face. You had to reteach how to walk as well. Like you went through a lot.
Well, yeah, I remember when I was discharged, I was in a wheelchair being pushed down to the car. Our friend came and picked me up. And I got in the elevator, and there's this little girl stood in the elevator opposite me. She must have been about 7 or 8. And I looked like I'd just come out of a car crash. I had half a shaved head.
Yeah.
I had a massive scar that went right from the top of my skull all the way down to my ear. A swollen, paralyzed face. One half of my face was just frozen and not moving and droopy, and my
Wow.
eyes were all puffy. And I just kind of get this little girl, this little cheeky half smile. And she just smiled back at me, and I was just like, oh God, I don't know. Do you know what it was, right? I really love coffee,
Me too.
and coffee in England's awful. But
Yeah.
anyway, there was this coffee shop that I used to go to every morning. It was one block away from my flat. And I said to myself, I'm going tomorrow morning, because part of your recovery is you have to go out for a walk every day. Even though you sleep probably 23 hours a day, you have to
Wow.
try and go out. Yeah, I was sleeping all the time, because it's the same impact on your brain as a brain injury.
Yeah.
So you have a lot of fatigue, which I still have now. Hence why 8:30 p.m. is late for me. But anyway,
Yeah. Sorry.
so I decided I'm just going to go. I'm going to get my coffee. So George obviously walked up with me, got my coffee, said hello to all the coffee guys, and they asked how I was, because they all knew I was going in for the operation, because I went there every day.
Yeah.
So that was my motivator, and it's a bit like pulling the band-aid off. Just go out. Don't hide in your house. If you've got facial paralysis after this operation, don't hide in your house, because it'll get worse and you'll build it up in your head
Yeah. Well, you got a lot
into
of
a
time to
thing.
kind of just lay there and think, so you can create all these scenarios in your head.
Yeah. So I just went out and got my coffee and did that every day. And then one of my goals, I remember, was to walk to Fitness First to see you.
Yeah, I remember it.
And a walk that normally would take me 20 minutes took me about 45 minutes. And I got there and I rang you and you weren't even there.
I'm so sorry.
But it doesn't matter, because the goal was to get there,
Yeah.
and I did that. So I just kind of set myself little walking goals. After a while, it became about building back up the stamina,
Mm.
and I was a bit disorientated. It's not like I would just walk down the street and fall over, but if I turned my head too quickly, I'd get disorientated, or if it's dark, I'd
Mm.
get disorientated. And that was that still happens now. You know, if it's dark outside or if I turn too quickly, I can easily walk into the wall or something.
Yeah, I remember you sending videos when you were walking, and I remember you sent me a photo when I missed it out the front of the Fitness First Steps. I still
Yeah, I did.
remember
Yeah.
that. Yeah. Yeah, I remember you sending me videos of you walking, and yeah, it wasn't like you were falling over, but you weren't like in a solid straight line, and you weren't,
Yeah.
and you still had to reteach your, well, not that your legs forgot how to walk, but you still had to kind of, reteach, I guess, your balance in
The
terms of.
balance. Yeah, that's it. So I
Okay.
feel a bit like a fraud when I say I had to learn to walk again, because people usually think of people who've been paralyzed or
Mm,
had a back injury. But what it was, because they destroyed one balance nerve, you have to let the other balance nerve compensate
mm,
to kind of keep you straight. So that was the aspect, the retraining. Um, I got told off in the hospital. So I had a stroller for a few days, had to use the stroller. And then one
yeah.
day I decided not to. And I was using the handrail, and George was next to me. And I took my hand off the handrail, and this nurse just yelled at me down the corridor. Try, I don't know, do I?
Yeah. But maybe there's a safer way to try, or maybe at a later date. But I guess that goes back to your attitude of always, trying to improve, trying to make progress somehow and push yourself.
Yeah, and when I was in intensive care, the physios came in. I think it was the first or second day, because they get you up really quickly. Because the quicker you're up, the quicker you start to the balance comes back, and it
Mm,
feels awful because you've got vertigo and you feel like you're on a ship with sickness,
yeah.
and it's awful. But all I knew in my head was I knew my legs were strong and I knew my core was strong. So I knew they would keep me up straight. All I had to do was balance. And so I stood up, and then they said, "Oh, you're quite strong. Do you want to go for a walk?" So I said, "All right." So I'm walking down intensive care with 3 physios, and then I walked back, and they said, "People don't usually do that on the first day."
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah,
And then you're like, have you got a trap bar around?
I know.
Couple 10-kilo plates. Yeah. That's awesome.
And another little thing, it's a really small thing, but the hospital beds, they're really big and clunky and hard to move around in. But I could easily just pull myself up and move about, with my arms because they were strong.
Yeah.
So all these really little things that I tried to say on my Instagram as well, if you're going in for your operation, all these little things are going to help you. It
Get
doesn't
strong.
matter if your fitness levels are less than mine. There's always something you can do to improve to make it better for you when you do go in for your operation.
Yeah, and that's the benefit that you had from training with me, or just training in general. I'm not trying to claim anything here, but you know, getting strong, eating healthy, trying to live your best life before you go in. That was inspiring in itself, because you kind of, at one point you knew that there was a time that you would have to get the operation, but you weren't like, oh, I'm going to stop now 6 months out. Like we literally trained till the last day possible, and then you were like, I need to I need
Yeah,
to start preparing, or I can't remember the reason or the actual timeline
no,
that you left, but it was relatively close to when you were
it
having
was
the
a few
operation.
days.
Yeah.
It was a few
Okay.
days before, yeah, the
Mm,
operation.
yeah. That's awesome.
Yeah. And do you know what? I went through a grieving process when I left the gym, because that was one of the most upsetting things about knowing I was going to have that operation. What would my fitness be like afterwards?
Mm. So what
And
so what has that been like? Sorry to cut you off. After the surgery, because I'm, like, we've been staying in touch. You've sent me videos of you, deadlifting again, and even things that you were doing early on, because you went and saw a physio, or sorry, not a physio, or maybe a personal trainer that focused on balance and on that area of training, which I'm like, that's not me. I'm not the person to see after that. Like, if you want to get
see,
some,
that's why I never asked you.
yeah. If you want to
No,
get some PBs, I'm the guy to see, but not, after
yeah,
your surgery.
But the other thing as well was the gym that I moved to was right next to my workplace. It was in the same building. And
Mm,
because I was having the fatigue, the tiredness, I just had to cut out anything that was, using up energy without a purpose, I guess.
yeah.
But yeah, the new PT, we did a lot of coordination and balance work, and probably a little bit too much cardio for my liking. I think I swore at him quite a lot and scowled, and
He deserves it.
but we did things like, I actually did my first single-legged box jump after my surgery.
That's crazy. The amount of balance that takes and coordination is crazy.
And it was terrifying. And I remember putting these videos on my Instagram of my failures beforehand. I didn't want to just put the one up of where I did it.
Mm.
So there was a bunch where I just kind of like, I don't even know what I did. I just kind of ran into the box and flopped on it. I don't know. It was just scary. But eventually I made it. Yeah. So things like that. And I did start lifting again. I think I got to like maybe 50 kilos. You have to be careful, because if you do too much lifting too soon, you can cause a CFS leak, which is brain fluid leak.
Mm. Okay.
So after the operation, you're not allowed to lift anything more than a bag of sugar for a month.
Bag of
So that's
sugar.
why,
That's very
yeah.
specific.
Well, that was it. That was the surgeon's example. No doing laundry, no doing the dishwasher, nothing. So George had a month off work to care for me 24 hours, basically,
Mm.
make sure I didn't do anything, and get everything that I needed. But yeah, so we worked a lot on balance and things like that, and I started to get back into deadlifts, and I just did it really carefully because I didn't want to, cause any more damage.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's actually 9 weeks. 9 weeks post-op, I did a handstand.
Wow. Really?
Yeah,
Did you send that one to me? Maybe.
I don't know. I put it on Instagram, but anyway, yeah, 9 weeks post-op, I did
Wow.
a handstand. I could do them beforehand though, so
Yeah, once again, that helped.
yeah, because we'd done a lot together, hadn't we, of handstands?
Yeah, we did a bit.
Yeah, so that was really a good achievement, actually. I wasn't really sure. Again, I just had to put my trust in my strength and just hope that I stayed upright.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow.
Yeah,
But
and then, well, 7 months after the op, we moved back to the UK, and then I was doing my masters in London, but I was commuting from North Yorkshire, so it was really taking a lot out of me. But I did join a gym again, and I was going maybe once a week. And then lockdown happened.
yeah. So how was that? Did you train at home or not really?
It was really hard because we were in a really small flat, and
Yeah.
yeah, so no, not really. It was just my fitness levels just went downhill. They opened up again, so I started going back again. Then we moved house to another county, and I joined a gym here, where I live now. And it's a woman's only gym, and it's like circuits, so you go around using the same machines. And
Mm.
I'm sure, knowing me, this wouldn't surprise you that after six rounds of that, I was bored. So I
Yeah.
said, can I go in the studio instead and use your equipment? And I got a bit of a lecture on how lifting weights won't get me the results that I want.
Really? What were they saying? You're like, mate, you're talking to the wrong person.
I know. I was just like, don't even bother.
But what sort of
So,
advice is that in the
well,
first place?
I think it was more that they just preferred these hydraulic machines, because they said you get the most out of your muscles in both directions. And I thought, well, you can do that with free weights if you're doing it properly.
Yeah, that's right.
But because it was not set up to be that kind of gym, it only had light weights and only a few dumbbells and a barbell. So I've been doing that. I was doing that for a few weeks, few months, and then I was pregnant. I got pregnant, so I carried on into my second trimester. But then I started to get really, really tired and just
Mm.
not right. I wasn't right at all. My mental health wasn't right. Pregnancy absolutely knocked my mental health and my physical health. And so I stopped going to the gym. And I found out afterwards, actually, my iron levels were so low.
Yeah. Okay.
My midwife checked them, and so I was put on iron tablets. And so now my energy is a lot better, but I'm now in my third trimester and I'm the size of a walrus. So I switched to going out for a walk every day instead. So
Yeah.
that's where I'm at the moment. And actually, I bought a barbell yesterday for home
Okay.
for after when the baby's born.
Yeah. Nice. Wow. So do you have, well, I guess you'll see how you feel afterwards, but in terms of a timeline after training, you're going to get back into the barbell.
Yeah, and I'm gonna get some dumbbells and stuff that I can do at home.
Yeah. Wow. That's awesome. It's such a, like, that's why I wanted to have you on. It's such a awesome story to hear. And I guess it's so consistent to hear your mindset and your attitude throughout, even training with me, how you were so driven and so, sorry, my voice, sound like I've been smoking. Um, your drive just through us training has just continued, through going through your surgery, recovering and dealing with, and you were studying, now you're pregnant, you're still doing things, which is so awesome. Like, you're still progressing, you're still um yeah, pushing your body to the limit, even though there's, been limits that you've already really pushed that other people can't really push, being 100% healthy or without having a brain tumor. It's so awesome. It's just been so consistent, like your attitude. It's such a great attitude to have, instead of taking the old, oh, this is hard or woe is me type of attitude, which it definitely has been. I'm sure, you're touching on times where you're feeling great and being consistent. I'm sure there were tough times as well where you were upset, and you said, you've gone through times where you were grieving, which is totally understandable.
Mm,
It's just so awesome
yeah,
to see that you've, remained strong.
yeah, I did. I definitely grieved my fitness. It was probably when I got pregnant and I was in the first trimester. I had a lot of nausea and sickness, and then the iron problems, and then on top of that I had the fatigue still from the brain tumor. And
Mm,
when you've got a health condition or multiple health conditions, you get a lot of appointments that come with that, and a lot of daily routines. I still have to do the facial exercises. I'm still having facial physio now for my face. It's now about a grade 3. But I've only just recently retrained my mouth how to eat with the mouth closed. And like I said to you earlier, last week I had surgery on my inside of my mouth to have a growth removed where I'd bitten my lip when I had the facial paralysis in the early days, and it just turned into this big kind of growth. And whenever I'd eat something that was a bit more complicated to eat, I would bite it and it was really painful, and then
mm.
I'd avoid eating on that side, so then I wasn't retraining those muscles. And this is nearly 3 years post-op, and I'm still going through all of that stuff. And
Yeah.
it's just really draining and tiring.
So how do you,
Um,
so how do you stay positive, or how do you keep showing up every day?
because what's the alternative? The alternative is a spiral into nowhere good.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. I've often been asked that question on my stories. How do you stay positive? Not that, I'm not saying I've been dealing with stuff, as difficult as you have been. But once again, coming back to that book that I read, but I've said that before too. What's the alternative? If you wake up and you're not positive, the alternative is being negative. And then as soon as you have that negative thought or that negative approach to the day, like you said, it's a downward spiral. Like I like the saying, like, I don't really know, I guess, it word for word, the actual quote, but like, you get what you see. So if you wake up and you kind of put on these negative glasses, that's all you're going to see, as opposed
Yeah,
to waking up with these positive glasses. You know, you can see, let's say you can see opportunity, you can see love, you can see, you know, happiness in certain things. You know, oh, it's raining. You know, if you had the negative glasses on, oh, it's such a shit day, I can't believe this. You know, it's meant to be summer. You know, as opposed to like, okay, it's raining, I'm not going to go outside, but I can do things inside. You know,
yeah,
that's a small example where that negative or positive thought or decision can impact the rest of your day.
yeah. And don't get me wrong, I have tantrums, you know, and I get frustrated and annoyed about things, um, and you know, with the tiredness and stuff like that. And even more so in the pregnancy, it's just made it 100 times worse. So everything that I had going on already is just even worse being pregnant, because your balance is compromised the bigger you get. You know,
Yeah.
just little things like putting my socks on is really hard because I've got a big bump, and then I'm tired anyway because the pregnancy, and I'm tired anyway because the fatigue, and then I might have a tantrum, you know, and get in a strop and cry.
Yeah.
But then I'll just like be like, right, okay, come on, let's do something a bit more productive. But I think the other thing as well that helped me was, well, doing my Instagram really helped, because I felt like I was being useful to other people and also useful to myself. And then when we moved back here, I wanted to do a master's in psychology, and I came across a master's called health psychology. So it's everything to do with behavior and health, you know, such as stopping smoking, reducing alcohol, um, you know, eating habits, all these different things. And I did my dissertation on carers' experiences of looking after acoustic neuroma patients.
Yeah.
So I interviewed over the year, I interviewed mums, dads, daughters, husbands, wives, partners, all these people that had looked after people like me. Um, and I finished the masters, and then in spring last year I submitted it to a journal for publication. That takes a long time, a lot longer than I thought. So I'm now going through the second round of revisions for it, but I'm hoping that it's going to be published early next year.
Awesome.
So
So what were the, like, can you talk about it or no?
yeah,
You have
yeah,
to wait.
it's my, no, I can talk about it. It's my dissertation. I just decided that I wanted it published because when I chose my supervisor, um, when we had our first meeting, I said to her, I want to get this published and I want to share the findings with brain tumor charities, because otherwise, what's the point in doing all this work for it to just sit on my Google Drive and never be seen?
Yeah.
And she loved that, and now I work for her as a researcher. So
Yeah.
all these good things have come out of it, you know, and we're trying to get it published. I've presented the findings to the British Acoustic Neuroma Association already. I worked with them to recruit people, and this week I've had talks with Brains Trust, another charity in the UK. They kind of support people with all kinds of brain tumours. And the good thing about getting it published is that it can help charities when they're making funding applications. So they can say, look, here's a valid study that says carers need more support in these areas. And it just
Mm.
kind of gives them a bit more backing.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I think that comes back down to, you know, having that positive mindset as well, that positive decision that you've like, okay, I want to do something that's going to help impact other people that have been in my situation, or people just around someone with, you know, is it acoustic neuroma? I want to get it right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, that's right.
Yeah. Like people being around it, you can help them once again, you know, but it's that decision that you've made. Okay, I want to help other people instead of, oh, you know, this is so hard, I'm just going to curl up into a ball and complain. That's, you know, that's so great. What were the like major findings that you that you found, the common threads that will really help people in the future?
Yeah, I think the most common things are lack of information at diagnosis stage, um, and lack of signposting. So people kind of left the appointments not really knowing where they can go and get support and help from.
Mm.
Um, and
Not Dr.
also,
Google.
yeah, and also lack of information on the recovery of the patient. So quite a lot of the participants didn't realise just how impaired the patient would be afterwards, and it was quite scary for them.
Mm.
So that was another area. It's difficult because particularly the NHS is very overstretched, but for example, one person didn't realize that the partner might feel sick, and he saw them being really violently sick, and that was obviously really distressing for him.
Yeah.
So just things like that, really.
Just kind of getting an accurate picture of what can happen, because it'll, yeah, like you're saying,
Yeah,
it can stop you from being blindsided and being surprised or getting upset or demotivated
yeah,
that you're not recovering
exactly.
at the right rate.
And that's another thing, people weren't sure, like, you know should my daughter be more progressed than this by now? They didn't really know, and they didn't really have many touch points afterwards. It was kind of go home and recover, we'll see you in 6 months or whatever.
Yeah. But you were out there trying to get some PT in, get some handstands in.
Yeah, I think I started the gym after 5 weeks, actually. As soon as So I said to my surgeon, I was like, is it all right now if I go upside down and do handstands? And he looked at me and he was like, well, yeah, but why would you want to? And
You're like, why not?
I was like, for fun.
Yeah. So obviously everyone's recovery is going to be different. So some people
Yeah,
might not be able to do a handstand after 9 weeks. Some people
no,
might still be grasping how to walk in 9 weeks
yeah,
or 10 weeks.
yeah. And this is, I did put this on my posts, it doesn't matter if you can't do a handstand, but if can you walk around the block?
Mm.
Can you just go out for a stroll? And the other thing to know is people are often older when they're diagnosed with this, so they have a lot more complications. So recovery is a lot harder. It's
Mm.
genuinely harder for those people.
Yeah, and I think that comes down to kind of all goals as well, or recovery, or trying to progress in some ways, having smaller goals. Like
Mm,
to take this into the gym setting, so many people want to, lose 10 kg straight away, or squat 100 kg, deadlift, whatever amount, but then they try it straight away and then they fail, or then they give up. But if they did what you're saying, is like, okay, instead of going for a handstand, can you walk around the block?
mm,
You kind of get these confidence milestones. And I've actually been thinking about the last couple of days, like the snowball effect of setting smaller goals, how it just gives you that confidence. Like you were learning how to walk, and you were also like learning how to or strengthen your facial muscles. And then
mm,
you kind of you were trying to figure out how to do a single leg box jump, and then you were you know deadlifting 50 kgs and stuff. You kind of had this, I guess not blueprint, but you had these little goals that you were setting, whether you're aware of them or not, and making progress on those. And I think that's such a powerful way to do it. And I think, especially on days where you're demotivated or don't feel like doing anything, which we have a lot, which obviously you will have a lot as well. It's about having
mm.
small goals. Maybe you just want to put your socks on, you know,
Yeah.
or yeah, just start your day with a glass of water, and then have a healthy breakfast, and then just see where that takes you for the rest of the day. But having these goals, I think that's definitely a way to kind of continue making progress, and not getting demotivated, because I think that's the
Mm,
worst thing. That's the worst thing, when you try something, you fail, and then you give up, which
mm,
is which is what a lot of people do. They have these huge ambitious goals, like, oh, I'm going to start a diet, so I'm going to go 100% keto, and then you stick to it for 1 or 2 days, and then you just can't stick to it. But instead you can just say, okay, I'm going to, instead of having 3 meals and 3 snacks, I'm going to have 3 meals and 2 snacks. Like, maybe
mm.
that's going to be a better approach for you, just setting the small goals and kind of gaining that momentum.
Yeah. And another thing that people after this surgery with the fatigue, another good thing to do is pacing. So spreading out your activities. it's a bit like, don't go for massive goals, go for little ones, but also don't book all your social activities in 1 week, because you'll probably be exhausted the week after. Spread them out, do smaller things, kind of smaller doses.
Yeah.
It's a really effective way of managing fatigue.
100%. So obviously I don't want to keep you too long. I guess just to kind of close up this conversation, what is life like now for you? Like, obviously we've kind of touched on it. You're pregnant, you're, I guess, struggling a little bit just in terms of energy. But you're like, what's life like now? You're working, you're pregnant, you're with your husband.
Yeah, so I've got a few research projects that I'm trying to wrap up before for January. Then I'll go on mat leave. Baby's due in February. Yeah, we're looking forward to it. We don't know if we're having a boy or girls. So that's really exciting.
Yeah, we were chatting about that before jumping online. I like that idea.
Yeah, and yeah, it's just exciting now that it's going to get here. And then what I really want to do is once I've kind of adapted to having a baby, I do want to start training again. Potentially with your, is it with Better with Brock
That's the
program?
podcast, Built by Brock.
Built by Brock, that's it. Sorry.
It's still with Brock though.
Yeah, training with Brock. I found it hard to find anyone else, to be honest, that I trust to help me get where I want. And because we worked together for so long in person, it'd be easy for me to follow your online program.
Yeah.
And I want to be a health inspiration to my child as well. Whether they're male or female, I want them to know about lifting.
Yeah. Well, it's so important, and I think it's definitely helped you to be the strong person you are physically and mentally where you are today. But I think that's awesome to have that kind of role model figure for your child. I've got actually quite a few friends that have children at the moment, and I actually went to a first birthday last weekend, and Dave Konya, if you remember him from Market Street. Oh, he was another personal trainer there. He was like my best friend at the gym. But he just had
The
his,
one who used to hover around sometimes.
yeah. He just had his first birthday. Well, his child, and he was like because there's the whole, you have a kid, you get a dad bod, or you kind of let yourself go. He's like, they're shredded. He's got like a 6-pack, 8-pack, like, not that that's the goal, but he's had the same mentality of, like, he wants his kid, obviously being a personal trainer, he's super into his health and fitness. And so is his wife, who is also a personal trainer, but he's very, I want my kid to, not necessarily his kid doesn't have to be shredded or know that you have to be super muscly when you're older, but he just wants them to be healthy, and know that, it's important, because it's not
Yeah.
just about, like I'm saying, getting shredded or being buff or impressing other people. It's about what you can do with your body and how that also impacts other aspects of your life as well.
Yeah, and like I said to George when we talked about goals for our kid, I only have one goal. I really want my kid to like themselves, because I think if you like yourself, it sets you up for everything. And I think health and fitness is really helpful for that, just
Yeah,
respecting yourself and liking yourself.
100%. And I think that's developed us into who we are. Like, it's definitely helped me be more disciplined, more committed, more hardworking, because you do that stuff in the gym and then you're like, well, I may as well do it in the rest of my life as well. It doesn't really make sense if you go to the gym, work really hard, be really disciplined, committed, and then you get out and you're just this like non-disciplined, non-motivated person. Like, it's just second nature that it's going to happen in other areas of your life. So to kind of wrap this up, I just want to say massive thanks. It's been awesome. I've wanted to have this conversation for a long time. I have notes on my laptop, and as soon as I was like podcast, I was like, Katie Gilchrist. have this conversation. I didn't tell you that. I didn't tell you that. But as soon as I made it, I put all these kind of people that I want to have on, and conversations I want to have. But yeah, I think it's super inspiring. As I said at the start, it's awesome. I think a lot of people will find this interesting and inspiring as well. You know, like sometimes we think our problems are very big. We think that what we're dealing is very hard. But and to hear your story kind of gives us a bit of perspective. Like, okay, someone's, you know, struggling to put their socks on, or or someone's trying to walk, or, you know, learn how to reuse their face. Maybe my problem's not as big as I thought it was, you know. So I think that's something that I definitely take away. But I just love your approach. I think it's awesome. You know, obviously since we worked together, I thought you're an amazing person, but I think your story needs to be heard. And yeah, wish you nothing but the best with your recovery as well. That's continuing, and your pregnancy with Bub,
Hmm.
whether male or female. May they be strong and like themselves.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. No, thanks so much for coming on. And yeah, I guess we'll chat soon. You keep me in the loop when Bubba comes out. I'd really appreciate that.
I will. I'll send you a picture.
Awesome. Okay. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you.